Welcome to the Highline Herd. I'm Shelby.
And I'm Sky.
So today we're going to be covering blanketing.
Yes.
A massive hot topic in the horse community. Should I blanket? Why should I blanket? When should I blanket?
Is it needed?
Does it ruin their coats? Does it help them? Like, there's a lot of misconceptions around blanketing. And this is one of those things that we're going to be speaking from experience, but also research. Through our own experiences, through watching other people, but also, looking up studies and looking up statistics and all of this stuff. So this episode's probably going to be a little informational overload because I've done a lot of looking into this, and it's one of those things that I am oddly passionate about.
Okay. Yeah, Shelby's definitely more of the wealth of knowledge when it comes to this topic. I just go with my gut and what feels right, and I pay attention to what my horses are doing out in the pasture.
But you're coming from a perspective of you're solely focused on your guys.
Yes.
And I'm coming from the perspective of a horse owner who is very frustrated. So I have only, had my horse since I got Valor in 2023. So I've only personally owned horses for a couple of years, and I have been extremely frustrated with the information out there. I have been extremely frustrated with how hard it is to find an answer on some of this stuff. And I also just really want to be able to educate and help people decide. For the longest time, you've just been, managing your two. Mm-hmm. Teaching hasn't really been an interest. You've just been, oh, my guys are fuzzy and they're not shivering. They're not burning through their weight. Yeah, that's great. It's a different of experiences and perspectives. And my experience is I have been so frustrated with finding an answer and figuring this out. And then, even when I'm satisfied with what I'm doing, I'm frustrated for other people that are still out there asking the question, and they're being told, you're being ridiculous. It's not natural. Don't blanket a horse, or you're going to ruin the coat, or, oh my God, you should always blanket the horse. If you don't blanket, you're a cruel abuser.
Yeah.
But, like Skylar said, it's about the horse in front of you. It's about, first off, your horse best. If you feel like your horse needs a blanket, throw a blanket on him.
Yeah. Don't not give your horse care based upon what somebody else is telling you to do or what you have heard other people talk about.
You know your horse best. You know your situation best.
Exactly.
All people can do is give you a second opinion, which may or may not be right. There's a reason we call it an opinion, not a fact.
Yes.
But like I said, this episode, is going to be more factual, more informational, more coming from the standpoint of, what we've done, what we've seen other people do, but also what we've researched. I purposely went out and found studies on this.
What Shelby's researched.
Well, that's the thing, though. If you guys wanted access to the research we do, we will absolutely post links in our summaries.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see, yeah, we looked into this. We didn't just grab one magazine article that supported us. We looked into it and we're like, well, do we have the wrong mindset? Do we have the right mindset?
Mm-hmm.
But
it gives you an opportunity to also fact check us.
Yes.
And do your own research, which we highly encourage that. Don't just take our word for everything.
Right. Because
we're still learning just like you all.
Exactly. Horse ownership is all about learning. Whether you're learning from other people's mistakes, whether you're learning from studies, whether you're going to places and seeing, oh, I really like that method. I really like that design, that style.
Yeah.
Horse ownership is all about learning and being open-minded, because you can have one horse for 20 plus years and every day they could show you something new.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a 20-year-old mare and the wealth of knowledge in her head unmatched. If these guys could speak to us, we would learn so much. But,
oh God, yeah. or we would hate our lives.
Yeah. Or we would feel, yeah. So let's delve into blanketing. Why people blanket, when you should blanket, all of that, because it's a lot. This might go over a little bit. Our usual 30-minute marker, this might go over a little bit. Or I might oversimplify it. Who knows?
We'll start with the oversimplify and dive in deeper when we need it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with the obvious. If your horse struggles to keep weight, if you have a sickly horse, if you have an older horse, or a baby, put a blanket on them. Mm-hmm. You're going to make their lives so much easier. You're going to make your life easier. If you've got a hard keeper who just will not hold weight, put a blanket on him so he's not burning through those calories. I have a horse in my barn right now. He's not my own. He's a hard keeper. He is the definition of a hard keeper. This horse was so ribby going into winter. We started blanketing him in October. Like, that is how desperate we were to keep weight on him and minimize how much he's burning to keep warm.
Yeah.
And he doesn't grow a coat either. Like, typical show horse, he's paper thin. So, you know, there's your oversimplification. If you've got a sickly horse, if you've got a hard keeper, if you are trying to keep weight on a horse and they burn through calories like no other, if you've got a baby, put a blanket on them. You're going to make their lives easier. You're going to make your life easier.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and even if it's not like a really thick winter blanket, anything is better than nothing.
No, and that's the other thing. So I'm a firm believer in you don't need 20 different blankets.
No.
That's something I run into is so many people overcomplicate the blanketing process. If you've got a good no-fill sheet, if you've got a good 200 grain medium weight and a 400 grain heavyweight, or multiple mediums, I personally prefer having mediums on hand than heavies, then your horse will be fine.
Yeah.
All my fuzzy guys get mediums when the temperature drops drastically or when it's windy. They all just get your basic 200 fill.
Yeah, mine
weights.
just have mediums. That's it. Yeah. I don't need heavy or anything. They both grow really thick winter coats.
Yeah.
So.
And so here's something I actually this is from one of the studies I found. So when you blanket your horse, you're not only reducing their calorie burning, you are also going to be increasing their core body temperature. What that means is they are going to drink more.
Yes.
Even if you have, colder water, let's say you aren't able to heat your water super effectively, or you just can't heat it, period. If their core body temperature is a little warmer, they're going to drink more. One of the mares in my barn, I had a medium weight on her. I thought about taking it off, but when I saw how much she was drinking, now she wasn't sweating. If your horse is sweating, pull the blankets off.
Yes.
She was just toastier than I normally would like, but she wasn't sweating. She wasn't uncomfortable. And I saw that her water intake had doubled. I was like, yep, you're getting a blanket. You're going to keep that on. I'm not taking it off of you or changing it.
And that's something that we dived into last episode about wintertime.
Yes, is water intake.
Yes, that's very important because we don't want them to get compacted and colic.
You definitely want to keep their water intake in as much as possible. And speaking of our last episode, we also talked about hay intake.
Yes.
How you're going to burn through more hay in the winter.
Yes.
But blanketing can actually help reduce that a little bit because they won't be burning through as many calories.
Yeah.
So there's no easy answer to, should I blanket, should I not blanket? Unless it's a matter of hard keeper, no coat, sickly. If you clip your horses, give them a blanket.
Yes, please.
You just removed all of their natural coat. So yeah, those are your easy answers. If you clip a horse, if you have a hard keeper, if you have a skinny horse, blanket. If you've got a fuzzy, fat on air, easy keeping horse, he probably doesn't need a blanket. But again, but sometimes, again, the weather and the temperature disagrees.
Mm-hmm.
If it's windy and wet, I know Skylar blankets her guys even though they have access to shelter because it helps.
Yeah. As long as their blankets are going to stay dry, yes, then I'll put a blanket on them.
Well, you can also waterproof your blankets.
Mm-hmm.
Either pay to have them waterproof or buy a waterproofing thing, like what they put on tents.
Mm-hmm. Scotch guard.
Yeah. This is actually an interesting quote I've seen from an old horseman. Horses can handle wind. Horses can handle rain. They cannot handle wind and rain.
No. Yeah.
So the way a horse's coat works, and most experienced horse owners know this, horses are not double coated like dogs.
Mm-mm.
But their coat is water resistant,
Mm-hmm.
especially their winter coat.
If you focus on a horse or look at a horse's coat, say if they're out in a rainstorm, you'll notice that their hairs will form into a bunch of points, and the water droplets will fall off of that. Yet underneath of that,
their skin should be dry.
It'll be dry.
Now, not all horses have great water resistance. If you go out and they don't have if their skin's wet, you need to blanket them. You need to take them in, dry them off, blanket them. But if they, like she said, if their hair is forming those points and you can see underneath they're dry, they're good. But if it's windy, all of that water has just made their hair lay flat. They can't poof up to block that wind. So they need a blanket when it's windy and rainy.
It's kind of like a good way that I see it, and the visual just popped in my head, so I'm going to share it, is a horse being out in the rain is like taking a shower, right? Like you're good, you dry off afterwards, whatever, you're fine. And then if you're in the rain and the wind, it's like trying to dry your hair while standing under the shower, but using a blow dryer to like do that. That wind is just going to blow all of that water straight onto the drier parts of your hair, and nothing is going to get dry.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Truly, horses can handle wind, they can handle rain, they can't handle the two together. And you're not going to be doing them any favors by combining the two.
No.
And this is another quote I've seen float around a lot of horse groups on social media is, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might spend $60, $100 buying a cheap medium for your horse. But that's cheaper than the thousands of dollars you might be paying in antibiotics, shavings, and food if they have to stay in on rest. So when you're looking at whether or not to blanket the horse and you're weighing the pros and cons, you're like, oh, but I really don't want to go trudging through the mud. Like, well, you don't want to go trudging through the mud now, but what about later when they're sick and they can't get up? Or when they're shivering so bad they can't walk.
And shivering too, just like in people, it burns so many calories. I think I saw, I did research on this for a school project many, many years ago, but like shivering in people, you burn 100 calories per like 5 minutes of shivering. So think about what that does for a horse, who they already burn way more than humans do.
Right, and say you have a hard keeper. Say you have something that doesn't want to keep weight. If shivering really burns that much in a human, imagine how much it does in a horse. And then, you've already got a horse you are struggling to keep weight on. Yeah, you want to minimize that as much as possible. But those are your easy answers. As we talked about this, sometimes there's extenuating circumstances. When the temperatures go from 30 to negative 15, I'm going to throw a blanket on my guys to help them deal with that sudden plummet. And then, if we stay at negative 15 for a week, I'll wean the blankets back off of them because they are fuzzy. But it's also about what they're used to. A horse in Alaska is used to negative 15. They're used to that bitter wind chill. But a horse in Texas isn't, right?
Exactly. Yes. Well, and I knew too, a lot of people, the common misconception for blanketing is that it ruins the winter coat or damages the winter coat.
In one of the studies I was reading, they address that because it is a very, very common misconception. A lot of people think, oh, it forces the hair to lay flat and it ruins its ability to poof and be windproof or waterproof. It doesn't. It has absolutely
that's false.
It has absolutely no effect on the hair's health. And again, my guys have been in and out of blankets all year because we've been dealing with sudden plummets. We've been
Same here.
Yeah. My guys are not any different than they were last year. Their hair is not changed. It's not affected. They are still out there staying just as warm. When we had a steady week of it being single digits and teens, I slowly pulled those blankets off of them once I was confident that they were used to that cool temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And they had no issues staying warm. They didn't consume more hay trying to stay warm. They weren't shivering.
Yep.
They just went out and were their normal selves.
Yeah.
But, like, that's, again, I know my horses, and I know that if I throw some mediums on them to help them get through the worst of it, they'll be better off in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
And my guys get fuzzy. So do yours.
Yeah. Mine are very fuzzy at the moment. They're a little bit soggy right now because they're choosing to stay out in this weird rain that we're getting. But, yes, they're fluffy.
They are so fluffy. It makes the one look like he weighs 200 pounds more than he does.
Yeah.
But it's all fluff.
Yep.
So, yeah, blanketing is 110%. Case-by-case basis. There's a couple easy answers, but overall, it's not a one and done. So, we touched on the easy parts of it, but when you get down into the science of it, do you want to be going through more hay, or do you want just to throw a blanket on and, increase that core temperature, limit what they're going to burn, which by proxy limits what they're going to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, another consideration for blankets. And again, I'm not a huge advocate for blankets. Both me and Skylar prefer our horses live as naturally as possible, but we also understand a domesticated horse is not the same as a wild horse.
Yes.
The circumstances are vastly different.
Yes.
And the common argument of, oh, well, what do horses in the wild do? Well, they die.
Yes.
If they don't grow a good coat, if they aren't able to huddle with their herd, if they aren't able to get out of the weather.
Or know where to go to, like, get away from the wind. Yeah. They're gonna die.
They die. They freeze to death. They get sick, And, even domesticated horses, like, don't always know what's best for them. The amount of, times I've seen, people making posts or even just personal experience, horses like Skylar's right now choosing to stay out in the cold rain instead of going into the warm space they have access to.
Actually, so I find this a little bit funny, and this is a little bit of a detour on the conversation. I'm sorry. But I'm looking at it. So I just got a Mustang. His name is Sundown, and he is about 2 years old, maybe 2.5. He's a little gelding, and I love him. He's amazing. He is choosing to stay under his shelter for the most part of the day if it is raining. Like, he wants to be out of it. He doesn't care. Like, he's got a great winter coat, so I'm not even to the part or, like, the stage in his gentling process where I could get a blanket on him, but I'm not worried about him because he has that thick winter coat. Yet my domesticated horses, Willie and Chance, they are choosing to stand out in the rain all day long, and they have access to go into the barn and into their stalls, but they're choosing to stay out. And not, like, stay out and eat their hay, stay out and sit in the corner of the pasture with their heads down and just go to sleep. So I find that very interesting that even though, like, the Mustang who has that, like, deeper rooted survival instinct, he's choosing to stay under the shelter.
But when we look at those social media groups, like the one that both you and I are in, the amount of Mustangs that, once they have access to that pampered life,
they're like, oh,
yeah, your domestics, like, they have access to a whole round bale, they have access to their stalls, and they are huddled in the corner of the mud lot.
Yep.
And in that case, it's an owner decision.
Well, and it's also, too, why I bring it up is it just confirms that every horse is different.
Absolutely.
Every stereotype, every difference in, like, breeds and stuff, like, that is all dependent on the horse, the owner, and the pairing.
That's actually interesting, too, because I have, 6 in my barn, 4 have access to their runouts. The runouts are not fully covered. About half has a roof over it. The other half is open. My 2 geldings, prefer to go stand in the weather. If it's raining, they're going to go stand at the far end of their run out in the rain. just like Skylar's, they have access to nice cozy stalls out of the weather, out of the wind, with nets of hay and everything. And my two geldings will come in dripping wet because they want to go stand in the weather. And you know what? I look at it this way. They are not actively shivering. They are not freezing. They are not going to get sick. They have the choice. And as of this moment, if they so choose to go stand in that, it is safe for them to do so.
Yeah.
As the owner, you have to decide ultimately what is best for your horse.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's something you are wholeheartedly against, because I know there are people out there that condemn blankets. They refuse to use them. They hate them with every fiber of their being. It does not matter what you put in front of them. Blankets are horrible. Those are the kinds of people whose horses usually aren't always the healthiest, because my viewing on blanketing has changed in my short time of owning horses.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I was like, oh, die hard, no blankets. They can deal with it. Horses in the wild, all that.
And that's how I was too when first getting into horse ownership. Yeah.
Because both of us prefer our horses be as natural as possible, but, the more looking and research I did, the more I started paying attention to everybody around me, the more I realized.
Shoot. Yeah. These are actually helping.
Yeah.
This is a beneficial tool to use.
It is. And it goes back to can you help your horse out?
Mm-hmm.
They don't always know what's best for them. And just like kids, sometimes we have to do things they don't like to give them the best care that they need.
Mm-hmm.
So my gelding is not a fan of blankets.
Yeah, Willie does not like blankets.
Yeah.
But he'll put up with it.
Valor, will move away. Sometimes I have had to tie him to get a blanket on him. And now, to be fair, he wears massive blankets because he himself is a big horse. So it's basically like I'm throwing a whole, parachute over him. So, it's a little scary, but it's for his own good. It helps him drink more water. It helps him deal with any sudden drops in temperature. It helps him deal with the wind or the rain. You can turn out horses in the wind and the rain if they have shelter and blankets.
Yeah.
There are so many benefits to blanketing. I understand the concept of wanting them to be horses, but if you can provide them a modicum of extra comfort, if you can make their lives a little easier, isn't that what you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the simplified version of blankets is,
it's a tool. Use them.
Yes. If you have a tool at your disposal and you're choosing not to use it just because of your own
beliefs.
Yeah. But your beliefs aren't based in fact, then maybe you need to reevaluate.
Or at least do some more research and look into the science of...
Because, again, I have tons. I have 3 on hand right now, articles and studies that I looked into specifically to provide you guys if you want to fact check that.
We'll include those in the description.
A fact check. Yeah. Wow, that's a hard word to get out, isn't it?
You got it.
I did. If you want to fact check us, you will have access to the same information we looked into. And again, just as much as we're going off, these studies, we're also going off experience and what we've seen other people do. And I'll be completely honest. My outlook on blanketing did a complete flip.
Same.
Complete jump to the opposite side of the coin. Not because of the research. Not because of what I've seen. I saw one well-written post by a guy who has, 50 years of experience with horses, feeding horses, caring for horses, helping people care for their horses. He made one well-written post about blankets that made me go back and reevaluate and do the research. And I was like, huh, if I had done this, could I have prevented, other things that happened? And, through my experiences this year with blanketing, watching a mare who barely touches her buckets, double her water intake because I chose to keep a slightly heavier blanket than she needed on. So she was that much warmer that she was seeking out more water. And again, when you're blanketing horses and you're looking at how you want to blanket them, you can always put another blanket on.
Yeah.
You can always bring them out of the wind for 20 minutes and throw another blanket on and help them warm up. If your horse starts sweating, you just lost your battle, because getting these guys dry in the wintertime is a pain.
Yes.
And
it's dangerous,
It
too.
is. It's extremely dangerous. And, if, say, again, a lot of us horse owners are on a budget. Owning these guys is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
If you've only got 2 or 3 blankets in your arsenal, you're out one because you just let it get soaked in sweat. And so now you can't use that blanket unless you can take it in and throw it in your dryer.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can go throw it under some hot lights.
Now, I had 4 horses at one point in my barn, and we had 7 winter blankets to switch between. And I'll tell you, when the horses rolled or went out in the rain and it was nasty muddy, and I had to take those blankets off and let them dry, like, it was a struggle to try to put new ones on to keep them at least warm, because I had 2 horses that really needed blankets. So it's good to kind of prepare and at least have 2 or 3 blankets, or even sheets, or coolers, anything.
Honestly, throwing a cooler on and a sheet over top is going to be closer to your medium weight blanket.
Yes.
But I highly recommend you do not leave a horse in their stall unsupervised with a cooler on.
Yeah.
Because those fleece coolers are so hard to get clean.
And if
they do get warm. Yeah.
Or anything on them, you're going to pay either a lot to get them laundry, or like the laundry.
Or you're going to be spending a lot of time picking shavings out of
hand picking, brushing them out, whatever you can do. Yeah.
But yeah, blanketing horses is not easy, but hopefully this episode made it a little easier, because there is an easy yes or no answer sometimes. If you've got a hard keeper, if you've got a sicklier one, if you have a no fur horse,
or even a young baby.
Yeah, give them a blanket. If you've got one that's fat on air, fuzzy, and you're just over here like, can you lose some weight? It's -5 out and you're still like 100 pounds over. They don't need a blanket.
Yeah.
And there's also extenuating circumstances. You have show horses who get clipped. Give them a blanket.
Mm-hmm.
You've got temps going from 30 to 5. Give them a blanket. Help them deal with that. You've got a horse that might not drink so much, and a blanket could help. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's going to be windy. Your horse almost never wears a blanket, but they live out, and it's going to be 40-mile-per-hour winds. If a blanket offers them a modicum of comfort,
give it to them.
Yeah, throw it on.
Don't hesitate. Yeah.
But again, this isn't just an episode about advocating, oh, blanket your horse, blanket your horse. Again, my guys don't have blankets on right now.
Yeah.
Skylers are out in the weather and they don't have blankets on.
It's all based on your horse, you, and how they handle everything.
Exactly. A big part of horse ownership, and I know in this world it is hard to do, with so many different voices and opinions coming at you from all angles.
People criticizing,
yes,
or harassing and bashing.
You know you and your horse and your situation best.
Yep.
Trust your gut. If your gut says blanketing your horse is the best option for whatever's coming, bad weather, drops in temperature, whatever. If your gut is leaning towards blanket them.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a fat on air, easy keeper, and all you have is a light sheet to break the wind, great. That's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And yeah, extras is nice, but if you don't have them, you need to be ultra aware then that your horse isn't overheating, that they're not getting wet through those blankets.
Yes.
That those blankets aren't getting nasty. Because both of us understand there's a lot of horse owners on a budget. And there's a lot of things that are expensive, and blankets get expensive.
Yes.
But vet bills cost so much more.
Yep.
So, hopefully this helped clear it up blanketing a little bit. If it didn't, feel free to reach out and we can touch on it again.
Yeah, because there's so many different avenues that we could go down to and further talk about things.
We just tried to keep it a little simpler.
Short and sweet.
Yeah. I could definitely go in and quote from those studies, exactly what they do, exactly how they help. But I don't think I quite need to do that right now unless there's more interest. But yeah, there's sometimes there's easy answers to the blanketing, and then other times it's just about trusting your gut.
Yep.
You know your horse and your situation best. Trust yourself.
Yeah.
And if you've owned that horse for 4 years, 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, you definitely know your horse best. You've been doing this a while. Trust yourself. I know there's so much out there that says otherwise.
There's so many hateful people out there, too, that will want to bash you for your beliefs or the way that you do things because it's different than theirs.
It didn't work for them the one time they may have tried it.
Exactly. Those aren't the people that you need to pay attention to. If you find a different way of doing something, then go for it. As long as it's helping the horse and helping you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I can tell you right now, the barn I used to be at, that trainer was diehard no blankets. And if your horse was fuzzy, don't buy a blanket. That's ridiculous. Don't buy a blanket. But that put me in a situation last year that I feel like I could have avoided if I had a little bit more knowledge about blankets and water. Mm-hmm. So trust yourself, do your research, but trust yourself.
Yeah.
Asking for other people's opinions is only going to make you feel bad and confuse you.
Yeah.
We know this is a hot topic, but it's one that needs to be discussed and needs to be discussed more openly, more kindly.
Yeah. Than just bashing.
Yeah. Doesn't help anybody.
No. It's not constructive in any way, shape, or form. So we hope that this podcast becomes it's like a safe space that you can come to us with questions and we'll address things. We'll try to talk about things.
And again, if this episode on blanketing wasn't clear enough, I personally know I'd be happy to go back into it.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to answer questions on it because it is one of those tools of horse ownership that I feel like is overlooked and misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. Very.
You've got so many different things out there,
different opinions, and people posting
articles
and papers that aren't founded by any type of research.
All the different blanket types, then that adds a whole nother level of difficulty.
Yes.
Do you do leg straps? Do you just have a tailband? Do you do hoods? No hoods?
Different fastenings and
So there's definitely a lot that can be covered, but we really wanted to focus on the bare bones of it, the part that most people get stuck on is should I or should I not blanket?
Yep.
So thanks for listening.
Yeah.
We'll see you on our next episode.